Welcome back to Deal Flow. Ryan Ray here as always. Today we have on, I think the first time we've talked about the USDA loans. And so, Nick, it's good to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Doing well.
Maybe
Doing
give
well.
us a
Thank you.
yeah, well, give us a quick introduction of who you are, who you work for, and kind of what all you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Nick Swanda. I work for North Avenue Capital. We're a government guaranteed lender working primarily in the USDA Business and Industry Program and the SBA 7A program. We've been known for primarily the USDA Business and Industry loans. It's a government guaranteed loan program for lenders, and it'll guarantee lenders up to 80% of the loans. And North Avenue has been doing that for the past 8, 9 years now. We're probably one of the largest lenders in the country. I did about 180 million plus last year in these BNI loans.
Okay, so let's kind of unpack maybe stuff that we talked about on the podcast, which is the 7A, the 504. For all intents and purposes, you think of a 7A as 5 million or less. I know there's ways that you can get more, but and then the 504 I think is like 16.5 or something like that if you could do the green additions. The USDA, how big of a loan is that?
Yeah, so USDA can go up from there's a few different programs. So the business and industry program. So a lot of people will think farms, agricultural things of that nature. It's actually quite the opposite. There's a completely separate program for that. But the business and industry program will go up from 1 million to $25 million per borrower. On the renewable energy side, the will go. You can go up to about $25 million per borrower, and then on the what they call the community facility side, more the nonprofit sector, things like colleges, hospitals, um, assisted living facilities, or things like that, you can get up to about 40 million in capital.
Well, if I can unmute myself. Okay, and so 25 million per borrower. And so let's say it's a team of four and they wanted to do something that's $100 million. Could they do 25 million per person, or is it 25 million for the
Per
entity?
borrowing entity, and so it needs to be like a standalone business. So let's say you have a business in Texas, and then you have another business, maybe that they're in the same industry, but it provides a different service in a different part of the state. You could do two USDA loans that way,
Hmm.
and that'll roll up into an operating or holding company, into the holding company. So that's how that program is leveraged. So it's not like a one and done, and then you can never get one again.
And so, if I heard you correctly, on a $25 million loan, the USDA would do $20 million of finance. They need to have $5 million of cash. Did I get that right?
So on a $25 million loan, they guarantee us, the lender, 80%. So what the borrower would want them to bring in is either 10%. They would want to show 10% balance sheet equity. So it doesn't have to be cash necessarily. That'll be up to the lender. If it is existing business, you'll see 10% balance sheet equity. If it's a startup or a business, they'll want to see 20% balance sheet equity, and if it's a construction deal, 25% balance sheet equity. So if on a construction, they would want to see $6.25 million of a new startup construction deal in balance sheet equity. So that can be a form of cash and or items spent. If you've already acquired the land, assets on your balance sheet that'll reflect as equity into the project. And then a lender usually will ask for a little bit of skin in the game and some cash
Hmm.
when it comes to things like that. So these are a little bit more sophisticated in the terms of the size and the length and the structure and the complexity when it comes to quote unquote. It's not necessarily small businesses; it's more businesses targeted in areas where economic growth needs to be stimulated.
Yeah, and so if a borrower is listening right now and they're going, okay, I want to buy in downtown Dallas, and it's a $20 million acquisition. This is not the program for them. It sounds like, right?
That's correct. So the USDA, I mean, it's for quote unquote rural America, and rural America is really defined by the geographic location that the USDA kind of sets out through the
Hmm.
census. Um, and through that data, you look at it and you'll see that 97% of the country is actually considered rural by the federal government. And so it literally comes down to the address. So there are projects where you can look at. A good example is the Greater Spartanburg Airport in Greenville. Half of that is considered ineligible, and half of it is considered eligible. So I've looked at a project there to build, hangars, and it's just kind of like, where are you guys planning on building this, and how does that work? And so it really depends on the specific geographic location so of that project. And urban major metro areas, it's not going to fit. But just outside those areas, absolutely that'll be able to be fit into that. So that's one of the primary requirements of the BNI program is address eligibility.
And you said that 97% number. I hadn't looked at it's the map online, I think. And if you can send me that link,
Yep.
I'll put in the show notes because you can actually go and see where this is. Because I remember looking at it one time, and I think there's like a little pocket in DFW that somehow is
Yeah.
eligible. Is that
So ironic, like airports and things of that nature, a lot of times, because a lot of people don't population density isn't
right?
as big there, and so you can have pockets and things that are eligible. So it's easier, obviously, to get capital in major metro market areas. The USDA has come alongside and said we want to help the lower middle market companies. They can't get conventional lending from a bank. That don't really want to give up all of their equity to an equity group.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a way to incentivize lenders to come into the program, and we'll come alongside and stimulate rural economies. I mean, if I had to boil it down to a sentence, what the program stood for is to save and create jobs throughout America.
Yeah.
And specifically, they would deem that rural America. But throughout the country, that's the sole purpose of this program.
Yeah, and so for the listeners, what I'm trying to push on here is to say where I live, it's a small town, but you wouldn't think it would be rural. Maybe where I live outside the city limits, you would think it'd be rural, but you would think the town's rural. But the last time I looked at the map, I think all of the county is considered rural, and so that's why I use downtown Dallas or New York
Yep.
City as kind of the example because yeah, they're very low shot, but just about anywhere else. So LA, whatever, Chicago, Miami. Okay, yeah, probably not going to work. But you'd be surprised just how close to the outside of that begins to qualify. And
Hmm.
so the 97% metric that you gave out, I mean, it's stunningly true because there is so much area that these loans are available for. Why do you think that, or maybe it's just a misconception by me that less people know about this than the 7A because or the 504, and it seems that those products are still pretty relatively unknown about, but this product seems to be really unknown about. Is it that maybe more people know about it and they're kind of hesitant to use it, or is it just not a lot of education out there? What's the holdback on more people using this product?
So I would say it's a little bit of both, and then the other hard part is these projects are labor intensive on the lender side, and they're really hard to get done. And there's a specific way. So each state, Texas operates a little bit differently than Arkansas versus Oklahoma versus California, right? So the way that the states and the state offices and the national office want to look through these loans and process these loans, they all have their certain proclivities that they want to see in a project, and it can be really hard. And so that's why you don't see JP Morgan or you don't see Bank of America or Wells Fargo, US Bank in these programs, because it's takes really a group of people that are dedicated and specifically solely experts in this program to come through and across. So there's a handful of lenders in the country that have really dedicated their time and effort and energy to really come into this. And so it's a lesser known program too. I mean, when you say USDA, I mean the first thing that I thought of when I came here is like, are we what is this, the beef shop? Am I approving the beef
Exactly.
in Publix or Walmart? Like, what is this? And so the name around it gives its own misconception, and it's a little bit of a misnomer. And so I think that in part, SBA is such a more small business, right?
Mm.
It's right there, it hits you in the face. You not yeah, the rural development. It's not quite as clear all the time, and so I think part of that is probably somewhat intentional because there are businesses in these areas that hey, you will find this financing when you'll get there, and so I think that's partly why too.
Yeah, and one thing I think just for the listeners in general is, when I talk to a borrower or a business buyer about getting financing, I always say, a lot of times people will not get approved for something because of the bank, not actually the program. And so
Hmm.
to your point, that's something key here is that we all have local banks. Some of them are great at SBA, probably some of them do USDA, I don't know. But oftentimes there's the guidelines that the government puts out, and then the bank has its own guidelines that don't actually match those guidelines. It's not saying that they're they contradict. But I'll give you a good example. I've talked to SBA lenders who will not lend in the oil and gas space,
Yep.
regardless of what it is. And there is some SBA guidelines around oil and gas, but they have further guidelines that go outside of that. And so if you talk to that SBA lender, you would get declined simply because of something that the bank chooses not to lend to, which I'm a capitalist. I don't, they can make their own decisions. I don't care about that. But I think the same thing's going to apply here is that if it's a harder program from a bank's standpoint to go through, then you've got to be very picky about how you determine which bank to work with, who has the expertise. And so, from a borrower perspective, goes, yeah, I could use 25 million. That's really what I need. I'm in rural area. I'm not in downtown Dallas. What are some of the questions that they should ask their prospective bank to make sure before they go through the process of being declined, and maybe declined for a reason that's not really valid according to the program, to determine whether or not their bank is a good bank to work with?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that they should ask the bank is, hey, what do you want to see from me in terms of equity?
Mhm.
Um, Skin in the game towards the deal. What do you want to see from me in operator experience and history? Like, where can I demonstrate to you that I've successfully managed a business and paid back $25 million? Because the bank, all they want to do at the end of the day is they want to mitigate their risk, and they want to know where their risk is, and everybody has a different comfortability level. And so, a potential borrower, I would say, like, I would ask the bank or the lending officer or the credit officer, whoever you're discussing this with, to say, like, what do I need to show you that I've done this successfully? And a lot of times, banks will ask for um, business statements, like financial statements from your business, previous things that you've done. Proof that if you're raising equity, that you've already raised the equity prior to coming to the bank, that you already have people outside of your the bank's organization that are willing to give you money to support you in this venture. So a lot of those things go a long way. Another question that, or something I would be prepared with, if say this is a startup or it's a new business or you're into it, is any LOIs or commitments from other businesses that would support a projected cash flows, right? To support what you're saying that you're going to be able to do and make if you get this loan. What kind of documentation the bank's going to want to see to support that? So a lot of times it'll be LOIs or purchase agreements or purchase orders, depending on the type of industry, what this is. And so, and it all of that comes through is just trying to get to the open, honest conversation of, hey, the bank sees you want $25 million from them. They're going to want to, do somewhat of a colonoscopy of your life and figure out
Yeah.
where everything is moving. And so if you can get to the things that matter to them most when it comes to risk, I think that's ultimately you'll get, not necessarily to be successful, but you'll get to a no or yes as quickly as you can with that information.
Okay. And so they kind of hear this and they're putting together their thoughts. Okay, I want to do this. They've got a home run deal worth $19 million right now, but they got to close it in 45 days for something crazy. Like, how fast can these deals get done, assuming they walk in fully prepared? And then what's kind of the average time it takes a deal to get done?
Yeah. So home run deal, 45 days. First thing we would probably tell them to do is, hey, you're probably going to need to go find a bridge lender or
Mm.
somebody that would be able to lend this. Because so we've had, and this happens right in our world. We have someone who's up against a 1031 exchange or a purchase sale agreement that they've gotten extensions on, and that by the time they get to us, it's like, man, we don't have much time. And so what that would be the first thing that we would tell them is, hey, we're not going to be able to move that fast. And the reason is because we can get through our underwriting and our due diligence process in roughly about 45 days, maybe less, especially if they're there. The other part of the process is it has to go through a state review, and depending on that state's lending authority, each state has their own lending limits.
Yep.
It'll go up to Washington, D.C. for its review. So you're looking on average about a 60 to 90-day turn with a borrower who's got everything ready to go and at the jump. And that's at a minimum. And you're probably looking at 90 to 120 days on average for a really sophisticated borrower package put together on that stuff. One of the things that North Avenue has been able to do, so we were acquired by Veritex Community Bank back in 2021. In those instances where there are items and things where it's we have more time than 45 days, but we need to move quickly and it's a good credit, our parent company is able to offer it's an interim kind of finance note. It's not necessarily a bridge. It'd be the same terms, same price that you would go with us. It would just be an interim note. What we would do is we take that package, we get an interim letter of approval from the USDA to finance that loan with interim financing. We fund that through our parent company, and then once the USDA reviews and approves the package, we would take out that interim note with our note, and so that takes all of the pressure out of necessarily the time and allows us, while we're going through that process, to then get the borrower the capital they need to either acquire, to start construction, to start producing, and then from there, by the time when it comes to the USDA close and we've gotten their approval on that decision, because we've already gotten the interim, but we've gotten that formal approval, we're able to take that out, and it's just everyone's breathing
Okay.
for the next
So
30 years.
so you're saying, teed up deals is going to be 80 to 100 days, probably as fast as they can go. But so I would guess for deals that have a little more hair on them, everything, it could be maybe 150, 200 days, maybe even longer, it sounds like.
It could be, yeah, it could be for sure, and those depend really on um, a lot of the every. I think you maybe relate to this, and every lender out there and every broker out there is document collection and third party reports. So like your appraisals, your environmental portion, your financials, you're getting your projections dialed in correctly. All of those things take a lot of time and doing them right, and there's time invested. So if we get someone that's a little bit earlier in the process, we'll commit to walk that journey with them if we believe in the project, and then we'll just take the time and knowing and understanding that this is going to be a little bit longer of a journey to get to financing, but we're going to be with you as part of that process rather than you're just kind of going out and you don't have a direction. And so we'll guide you through that process. And so that happens. So we have businesses that will come through. They'll have a lot of things in order, and then we'll have to, on a new business or an expansion, we'll have to order a feasibility study, and a minimum that takes 30 days to roll through all of that. And it's a much more extensive process on the USDA side than it is on most other sides. And so that kind of pulls things out, and it just takes some time. And so those deals do take time for sure.
I think as you touch on the feasibility study, one thing that I just want to throw in here, first time searchers who have never owned a business before, probably in the program for them, unless they're coming from a lot of money, they have some kind of great resume. This would be more for, I think you've used the term sophisticated buyers, that they need to consider this. Um,
Hmm.
but then the other thing is, and I think this gets lost on both the buyer and the seller side, the transaction rarely is what it costs to buy or sell a business, right? So if it's $1 million, 25 million bucks, it costs money to buy and sell businesses outside of the transaction price.
Yep.
And so if you got to get a feasibility study and all this stuff, you need to understand as a buyer or a seller that there are going to be other costs, attorneys, CPAs, maybe tax attorneys, brokers, whatever it is that you're using, feasibility studies. That's part of the process. And on these bigger deals, it should be expected that, hey, you might risk 50, 75, 100,000, I don't know what your average price is, and get told no. And so if you don't have that appetite for risk, no harm, no foul. But these bigger deals come with a larger risk for the bank, USDA. They come with a larger risk for everyone. And so they need to be prepared to go, okay, I've got to be willing to risk a decent amount of money for a deal that might not close. And so, but my question with all that being said is they come to you guys, they do the feasibility study. One of the things on the SBA side that can happen, I touched about earlier, is they get disqualified because of the bank's thing, not USDA. Do you
Hmm.
advise someone going, hey, listen, we can't do this, but a different USDA bank might? Because that's a question that I think every borrower should always ask. Is it me? Is it something about me? Is it the business? Is it the industry? Is it the SBA or the USDA? Because so many people walk away discouraged because they don't really know why. So do you guys counsel them like, hey, we don't do these types, but a different USDA lender would?
Absolutely. We do all of the above. So not only a USDA lender, but if they want to go to a bridge lender, if they're looking maybe for some more equity or someone to do it off their balance sheet, we absolutely will counsel people with that all the time, and we'll make the introductions for them as well to the other lenders, because we all have relationships in the industry, in the space, where we work together on projects. And there are deals absolutely that have happened this year that our credit committee couldn't get comfortable with, and we, instead of dragging it out and just saying no, best of luck, we're making introductions to other lenders so that client gets what they need at the end of the day, because that's ultimately, we know how hard it is. We know the struggle and the grind of an entrepreneur and what it takes to be successful, and really it takes a host of people behind you supporting you through that. And so we want to be that, whether it's a yes or no, we're going to commit that to our clients. Everybody that comes in and works with us, we want to make sure that they feel that. I mean, I think Elon Musk said it best. Being an entrepreneur is like staring into the abyss and chewing glass, right? It is a struggle and it is an everyday thing. And like your business is like typically these people like it's their baby. It's a part of the fabric of who they
Mhm.
are as a human. And so being sensitive to that is and helping them along the way is something that we're passionate about.
Okay. What's the biggest mistake that you guys see? I'm going to maybe eliminate one. They haven't looked into the rural area, so they're looking at downtown Dallas. Okay,
Yep.
let's like
Yep.
have that. Outside of that, what's the biggest mistake or things that people do when they come to you guys that if they would have done their homework or they would have done something, they could have sped the process up, they could have helped their chance of qualification? What would be like one or two things you'd say, hey, before you call us, make sure you do these things?
I would say the most important thing is make sure you have equity at hand and that proof of that equity. And then the second thing I would do is, I mean, some people will have appraisals and things. I mean, like a really solid set of financial projections that have been reviewed by a CPA, and then historical financial statements, balance sheet, tax, not tax return. USDA will not take tax returns. Ironically, the bank will want to see them, but P&Ls. So having those gap prepared and CPA reviewed at a minimum, uh, even projections 3 to 5 years, like that is critical to making a decision as quickly as possible. That's in a good state. I mean, those are the two things that I think help us make decisions quickly. And then having that the supporting documentation that says, hey, a good business plan, I would say is the third. I know you asked for two, but a decent business plan that shows how you're going to make money and you'll repay the bank back is absolutely critical.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things with the SBA, this seems like a no-brainer question, but we want to explore it is make sure personal guarantee, right? You're on the hook personally for this. This you can't tie this to the LLC, and if it fails, the LLC, like Ryan Ray, if he goes and gets this and it fails, it's on Ryan Ray, correct?
Right, right, Ryan Wright. No, so in this instance, Ryan Wright, there's a couple layers when it comes to the personal guarantee on the USDA side. There's there I would say, and it depends on the lender, but the teeth that are in like you're putting up your personal house and collateral and assets on the USDA side, I mean that I would say that would be go down to the lender, but the USDA as a regulation would not necessarily require that to the extent that the SBA would, even if that. So the way that the personal guarantee works, I mean, and the way that North Avenue underwrites that risk is that we take the tangible fixed asset value of the real estate and the real estate improvements, and we'll discount that on a one-to-one basis. So say it's a $10 million loan, and that appraisal comes in at $10 million. We would discount that appraisal, that real estate 20%, and we would say it's 8 million. We would lend you $8 million on that, and you would need to come up with that other 2 million in shortfall. Or if the appraisal, appraised at $12 million, we would be right at our one-to-one collateral threshold for that loan. And so that's what primarily protects you, the borrower, in an instance of a default if something goes bad, is that collateral asset. The second thing that protects us is the guarantee as the lender from the USDA, and that third thing that comes with it is that personal guarantee. And so USDA has a requirement that if 20% or more, if you're an owner in the business, you're required to personally guarantee the loan. If it's a bunch, we've had instances where 500 million on the balance sheet, a bunch of different LPs. There's really no GP. You can do a corporate guarantee in that instance. There is no one person necessarily reliable. Now, a bank may go and say, "Hey, this is the guy that we want. This is the CEO. We want him to put his name on it." But it's really kind of lender specific, and it's not as black and white, I would say, as the SBA program.
Okay. So obviously, if you're an SBA person, or you use a 7A or a 504, then there's some differences here. A lot of questions. We only have a few minutes left, so we can't spend hours unpacking all these. So I'm sure if people are interested in this kind of product, they need to obviously reach out to you guys. Is there any other resources we should point them to? And then how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so we have a really good resource center. We call it 80 to 90% of our deals, I would say, come to us through brokers. And so we have a broker education center on our website that has a lot of information about the USDA BNI program, and that would be a really good start. We want to be educating people, like you said, it's not a very well known program, so educating people on that those type of things. I mean, you can go in and find the 1RD is what the name of the regs are, 5001 1RD, and if you want. Go chew on that for a few months. That one is that it's hard and different, but the process really is just it's partly that, and then just sinking your teeth into it. And so if you know 7A, you'll know there will be a lot of similar things, and then there'll be a lot of nuances that are just completely different. And then there's just always that unknown that you'll never know. I mean, we learn stuff every single day in this space that we need to be
Yeah, I think that's a
successful at it.
good
So
point. To just wrap up on it
fun.
is that even people who work on these programs, you're always learning. You're always thinking of different ways to do stuff, trying it out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But coming in from the outside, you got to talk to someone. These are two, especially for this one. This is too complex. There's not as much information about it out there as the 504 or the 7A, which there's a lot, which is good. But there's probably more out there. There's even for those programs, we need more information out there. And so these programs are very complicated, and they're not easy. And then people, sometimes you will see like on X, people will ask the SBA something that someone never thought about asking, and they ask them, they go, "Yeah, you can do that." It's like, "Oh, wait, I didn't know that." And so you'll see people talking about it. So the same is definitely
Yeah.
true here because there's less people operating in this space. Okay, and so how can people reach you? Where should we send them to?
You can reach me. Best way to reach me probably is my cell phone or my email. I can give that to you if you want to drop in the description. That's the best way to reach me, and then our website at northavenue.com. Those are the best ways to reach me, to get a hold of me. More than happy to talk you through anything. Like I said, if we'll tell you yes or no as quickly as possible, and usually that's within 48 to 72 hours. We'll be able to get that information to you and then guide
Awesome.
you
Well,
along that
Nick, thank you
process
so
if
much
not.
for your time today, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Ryan.